Welcome to our deep dive, everybody. Today we're going to be focusing on just one source you sent in, a translated Tamil poem.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's called Hymn 22. It's a piece that, kind of dives into those big ideas of divine grace and truth and figuring out how to live righteously.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. The thing that really jumped out at me, though, was the poet's take on truth. Like, even the tiniest little white lie is a no-go. Pretty strong stance, don't you think?
Yeah, it is. And that's what makes this poem so interesting. It doesn't mess around. It just dives right into the deep end. Like, the poet isn't just saying, tell the truth. They're talking about, embodying it, making truth the foundation of your entire life.
It's not just about what you say. It's about, who you are, at your core.
Exactly. And the poem starts off with this powerful image of divine grace, right? It's this force that's so strong, so potent, it can even forgive, the most unthinkable acts. It's an idea that pops up in a bunch of different spiritual traditions, Have you ever thought about that before? This idea of, boundless forgiveness, even when, something truly terrible's happened.
It definitely gives you pause, we all make mistakes, right? But the idea that there's this possibility of being completely forgiven no matter what, it's humbling, and kind of awe-inspiring at the same time.
It is. It's talking about a level of compassion that's, honestly, it's kind of hard to even grasp. But here's where things get really interesting. It doesn't just say, hey, you're forgiven, now get out of here. It goes on to talk about this, divine path, almost like a roadmap, right? For living a life that's in sync with that same boundless compassion.
So it's not just about being forgiven for, straying off the path. It's about actually making a choice to walk that path.
Yeah, exactly. And this path, at least the way the poem describes it, it's paved with righteousness, compassion, and a deep dedication to making things right, reconciling. It's about trying to really live out those same qualities that we see in that divine grace, the grace that, forgives us in the first place.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. It's like we're holding up a mirror, right? We're trying to reflect those same qualities back out into the world.
You got it. And the poem's saying that walking this path, it's not like a leisurely stroll in the park. It takes effort, It means we got to confront our egos, actively try to shed those layers of pride and self-importance that can get in the way,
That's where it gets tough, right? Talking about humility is one thing, but actually, living it out, that's a whole other ballgame.
Totally. And the poem gets that. It doesn't sugarcoat things. It just straight up says, I've tossed aside all pride and ego from my heart, boom. It's like the poet is saying, look, this is the work. This is what it takes to walk this path.
There's this real sense of urgency there. The poet is trying to shake us away to something super important. Have you ever felt that kind of urgency? That pull towards something bigger, something beyond just yourself?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think we all have those moments where we get this feeling there's gotta be something more, something deeper we're supposed to be reaching for. And this poem, it really captures that, that yearning, that longing for something more than just surface level stuff. But it also gives us a way to approach that yearning, a path we can actually start walking on.
And that path, it all circles back to truth, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Because at the end of the day, this divine path we keep talking about, it's not some vague idea floating out there. It's about how we're living our lives, every single day. It's about the choices we make, the words we say, the way we treat the world around us.
So how do we make that real? How do we take these, big ideas like divine grace and truth and righteousness and actually apply them to our lives? Our lives are kind of messy, right? They're complicated.
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? And this poem, to be fair, it doesn't try to give us all the answers, like a step-by-step guide, but it does give us a framework, a way to start thinking about that question, to start figuring things out. And for me, it all goes back to truth, to making that the foundation of everything we do.
You mean that part where it says even the smallest lie is a no-go?
Yeah, exactly. Because just think about it, even the tiniest little fib, it creates a crack in that foundation. It separates who we really are from who we're pretending to be. And that separation has a ripple effect, It affects our relationships, how we act, our whole way of being in the world.
So truth isn't just some, abstract moral principle. It's the ground we stand on.
Exactly. It's where everything starts. And from that solid foundation of truth, we can start building a life that reflects those qualities, the grace, the righteousness, the compassion that the poem talks about.
It's almost like truth is the key that unlocks that door to the divine path.
I like that. That's a great way to put it, because it really captures what the poem is trying to say. It's not about being perfect, It's about being intentional. It's about making that conscious choice to line ourselves up with truth, to let it guide our thoughts, our words, and our actions.
So where does that leave us? What's the next step on this journey? You know, the poem calls it entering into truth. What does that even mean?
That's a great question. And honestly, I think it's something that each of us needs to explore for ourselves. But I think a good place to start is by asking ourselves, what does truth look like in my life right now? Where am I holding back? Where am I scared, to be totally honest, even with myself? Because until we face those shadowy parts of ourselves, those places where we're hiding from the truth, we can't fully step into the light of that divine path.
It's a powerful thought to think about. And you know what? I'm realizing this poem, even though it's super old, it really speaks to us today, to our modern world, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. Because in a world that's so full of distractions and noise, where even truth itself can feel slippery and hard to grasp, the message of this poem is more important now than ever. You know, it's a reminder that truth matters, that it has the power to shape not just our own lives, but the world around us.
Yeah. And you know what else is really striking me? The poem's emphasis on personal responsibility. Like, it's not waiting around for someone else to come along and show us the way. It's saying, look, I'm choosing to enter into truth, and you can too.
That's so true. It's an invitation, not a command. And in a world where it's easy to feel powerless, that's incredibly empowering. You know, it's saying you have the power to choose truth. You have the power to shape your own destiny. And that choice, that decision to really embrace truth, it's not like a one and done thing, you know? It's a practice, something you got to keep working at. Like every day asking ourselves, am I living in a way that lines up with what I know is true?
Yeah, it's kind of daunting though, right? I mean, truth isn't always so clear cut. There's a lot of gray areas.
Absolutely. And this poem, it gets that. It doesn't try to oversimplify things. It's not like, here's a set of rules, follow them. It's more about like a way of being, you know? How you approach things, situations, people, even your own thoughts. It's all got to be rooted in honesty and being real, being authentic.
So less about like reaching some final destination and more about the journey itself.
You got it. It's about showing up every day and being like, okay, how can I be more truthful in this moment? Where am I holding back? Am I being honest with myself? Because let's face it, sometimes the truth can be kind of, uncomfortable. It can make us question what we believe, what we assume, even who we think we are.
Definitely. It can really shake things up. But the poem seems to say that's where the real growth happens, you know, in that discomfort, when we're willing to face those hard truths.
You're totally right. In those moments when we step outside our comfort zone, when we question things, when we let go of the stories we've been telling ourselves, that's when we can really understand things in a new way and really change.
It's like the poem is saying, stop pretending and just be who you really are, flaws and all.
Yeah. Embrace it all, the good and the bad. And I think that's where compassion comes in. Entering into truth doesn't mean judging ourselves for the things we don't like. It's about seeing those things with kindness and understanding, and then choosing to move forward in a way that lines up with what we value most.
So we got to be accountable, but not beat ourselves up about it.
Yes, exactly. Finding that balance is key. Honesty and self-compassion, gotta have both. And that's where this idea of divine grace that the poem talks about is so important. When we know we're loved and forgiven no matter what, that gives us the guts to face the parts of ourselves we might want to hide.
Like it creates a safe space for us to do that inner work.
Yeah, exactly. And from that safe and supported place, we can start making choices that show our dedication to truth, both inside ourselves and in what we do out in the world.
Okay, so how do we actually live this out? You know, what does entering into truth look like in our day-to-day lives?
Well, it can show up in so many different ways. Maybe it's speaking up for what you believe in, even when it's not popular. Or it could be setting boundaries in relationships that aren't working anymore. It could even mean making a tough decision that lines up with your values, even if it means giving up something you thought you wanted.
So it's about living with integrity, even when it's really hard.
Exactly. And it's about always checking our motives, our actions, even our beliefs. Being willing to say, I was wrong, you know? To apologize when we've hurt someone and to try to make things right for past mistakes.
It's about setting the bar high for ourselves.
Yeah, and not just for ourselves, but for the systems and structures that shape the world we live in. Because entering into truth goes way beyond just us as individuals. It means challenging injustice, speaking out against things that are wrong, working to create a world that reflects truth, compassion, and righteousness, just like the poem says.
Making a difference, right?
Yeah.
Leaving things better than we found them.
You got it. And that's where the hope and power in this poem really shines. It reminds us that we're not just along for the ride,
Yeah.
We're helping to create this world.
Our choices matter, our actions matter, our commitment to truth matters.
Yes. That's a pretty amazing thing to realize. It means even when things are tough, even when the world feels messed up, we can choose to be the light. We can choose to be the truth, the compassion, the righteousness that can change things, not just for us, but for everyone.
It's a call to action. It's like the poem saying we're all in this together.
That's exactly it. And you know what? As we're getting to the end of our deep dive into Hymn 22, I want to leave you with this. The poem asks us to enter into truth, not as an idea, but as a way of life. So what does that look like for you? How can you live truth more fully in your thoughts, your words, your actions, starting today? Think about it. Find your own way to live in line with what you value most.
That's a powerful question to consider. And as we start wrapping up our exploration of Hymn 22, I want to throw that same question back to you, our listeners. What really resonated with you? What are you taking away from this deep dive? We've been talking about this whole entering into truth thing from the poem. It's a powerful idea, but sometimes it feels kind of hard to grasp,
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's where the real challenge is, right? It's not just about getting the concept in our heads. It's about actually living it out, in our everyday lives.
So how do we do that? How do we take this big kind of abstract idea and make it real, in our real messy lives?
Well, I think, first we got to realize that entering into truth, it's not like a one-time thing, It's not like you flip a switch and you're done. It's more like an ongoing process, It's about, developing a way of being in the world, a way of approaching everything, every situation, every conversation, every thought, with this commitment to being honest and real.
So it's not so much about, reaching some destination, but more about the journey itself.
Exactly. It's about showing up each day and asking yourself, okay, how can I be more truthful right now? Where am I holding back? Where am I, maybe not being totally honest even with myself? Because let's be real, sometimes the truth can be kind of uncomfortable. It can challenge our beliefs, our ideas about things, even who we think we are.
It can definitely shake things up.
Yeah.
But the poem seems to suggest that's where the real growth happens, when we're willing to face those tough truths.
I think you're right. It's in those moments when we step outside our comfort zone, when we question things, when we let go of those stories we tell ourselves. That's when we can really start to understand and change.
Like the poem saying, let go of all the pretending and just be who you really are, even with all the imperfections.
Yes, embrace it all, the light and the shadow. And I think that's where compassion comes in, Entering into truth doesn't mean beating ourselves up for our shortcomings. It's about recognizing those things with kindness, with understanding, and then, making a conscious choice to move forward in a way that aligns with, our values, what we believe in.
So we hold ourselves accountable, but we don't got to be super hard on ourselves.
Exactly. Finding that balance is so important. You got to have honesty, but also self-compassion. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where this whole idea of divine grace that the poem keeps talking about comes in, When we know deep down that we're loved and forgiven no matter what, it gives us the courage to face those parts of ourselves we might want to hide.
It gives us that safe space to do the inner work.
Yeah, exactly. And from that place of safety and support, we can start to make choices that really show our dedication to truth, both internally, inside ourselves, and also in how we act in the world.
So what does that look like, practically speaking? How do we actually enter into truth in our everyday lives?
Well, it can look like a lot of different things. It might be speaking up for what you believe in, even when it's hard. Even when people don't agree. It might mean setting boundaries in relationships that just aren't healthy anymore. Or maybe it means making a tough decision that's in line with your values, even if you got to sacrifice something you thought you wanted.
Living with integrity, even when it's challenging.
Exactly. And it's about, constantly checking ourselves, our motives, why we do things, what we believe. It's about being able to admit when we're wrong, to apologize when we've hurt someone, and to try to make things right for the mistakes we've made.
Holding ourselves to a higher standard.
Yes. And not just ourselves, but also the systems, the structures around us, Because entering into truth, it goes way beyond just us as individuals. It challenges us to speak out against injustice, against things that are wrong, to work towards creating a world that reflects those values of truth, compassion, and righteousness that the poem talks about.
It's about making a real difference in the world, right? Leaving things better than we found them.
Absolutely. And, I think that's where this message of hope and empowerment in the poem really comes through. It reminds us that we're not just passive observers in this world, we're active participants, you know? We have a role to play.
Our choices matter. Our actions matter. Our commitment to truth matters.
Yes, and that's a powerful thing to realize. Even when things feel tough, even when the world feels dark and confusing, we can choose to be the light. We can choose to embody those qualities of truth, compassion, and righteousness that can change things, not just for ourselves, but for everyone.
It's a call to action. It's a reminder that we're all connected. We're all in this together.
Exactly. And as we wrap up our deep dive into Hymn 22 today, I want to leave you with this thought. The poem asks us to enter into truth, not just as an idea, but as a way of life. So what does that look like for you? How can you bring more truth into your thoughts, your words, your actions, starting today? Think about that. Find your own path to living in a way that's true to yourself, to your values.
That's something for all of us to consider. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We hope it's given you some new insights and maybe even a little inspiration to take with you.